What's up, ecosystem? Welcome back to ATI Auto Business. It's Friday, it's noon. That means it's time for Cars on the Move live, noon Central Time with Todd Thompson. And we have a special guest today. We also have Rich Levene with us, a special guest. But first time on ATI, let's just go ahead and do drum roll. Please do jump in the live chat. And please do wish a very warm welcome to our friend Todd Caputo.
Hey guys, how are you? Good to see you. Nice to meet y'all.
Right. Great to see you. Thanks for jumping in, taking the time.
Absolutely.
Let's hand it right over to you. We're live. We can see you. We can hear you. Todd, please say hello and tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so hello everybody. My name's Todd Caputo, and I been in the car business literally since the womb, right? Like we talked about. And I was fortunate enough to get into the car business at a very young age and grow a Chevrolet business and grow a used car business. Really due to the hard work of my mom and my dad, and build a pretty successful business in upstate New York in the Syracuse, New York market. And eventually I was able to sell my dealerships to a publicly traded company. I sold my used car stores and my Chevy store to Sonic Automotive. Sonic turned them into used car stores in Echo Park, and they acquired the Chevrolet dealership. And then I had a great experience working for a publicly traded company, working for them as a director for Echo Park for a year and a half. And after that, I decided to start a small consulting business. So I do consulting now for people in auto. I do it for dealers. I do it for vendors. I work with auctions. I work with banks, pretty much anybody to do with retail or wholesale automotive in any area. I work with them, and I live and breathe the car business. I love it. I can't get away from it. So I'd rather be talking to you guys about cars on a Friday afternoon instead of being outside playing golf. So it's great to meet you.
Likewise. Awesome.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah. Rich, we know Rich. Rich, tell us who you are again.
I'm Rich Levene, founder of Dignity Leadership. I'm auction guy. I'm Rich the auction guy.
That's
so
what
I'm
I
looking
was
forward
thinking.
to hearing Todd's input today on vehicle acquisition, and I don't have the rich history that Todd has. He's telling us earlier, 8 cars and an Airstream, which is blew my mind, where he started from to where he's at now. So that's amazing.
It's good. Today we're going to talk about vehicle acquisition, right? Constraints in vehicle acquisition, is that right? Something along that line?
Can
That
be.
works.
I said can
Yeah.
be because it can be whatever we want.
Well, when Todd's intro, he
exactly.
started talking about banks and auctions.
I
You
heard
consult
that
banks?
too.
Yeah,
Auction.
so
Whoa.
guys, it's constantly in the headlines now. You don't stop hearing about the shortage of new cars and the shortage of used cars. And used cars are, 35% more expensive than they were, pre-COVID, right? There was an oversupply of new and a huge supply of used. And, the world is upside down compared to how it used to be. And it's been a huge challenge for dealers. It's obviously been a huge challenge for people in the auto transport business as well, because there's just not as many cars to haul, right? And then couple that with the prices of the used cars going up, and then with the interest rate increases we've seen over the last 12 months, it's been a very, very challenging environment. I can tell you that. And I've lived through a lot of them. I've lived through 9/11. I lived through 08, 09. I lived through when gas hit $4 for the first time and everybody freaked out. I've seen it all, but I've never, ever seen anything like this before. This is just unheard of.
So when you say you lived through it, right? Because somebody could say, well, I lived through it too. But when you say you lived through it, you mean?
Well, 9/11 is a good example. I flew to Odessa, Boston to a GM factory sale that morning. And I don't know if you guys know Odessa, Boston, but it's an old General Motors plant. I don't know if you've been there before or not, right? So it's an auction. It's partially inside, partially outside, and it's in an old factory. And I'll never forget, I'm in the lane, and I'm looking over in the office, and I see a bunch of people standing around a television. And I walk in there, I'm like, what's going on? And it's the Twin Towers, right? And the auction's going on while this is actually happening. I'll never forget this. I bought an Olzolero 6-cylinder 4-door gold Olzolero because we had one sold to a customer that wanted that car specifically. I had a dealer plate on me, and I left and I drove back. And I just remember the world going into chaos right after that. Used cars dropped in value 35%, 40%. The world froze up. So I remember that. And that was crazy. I don't travel anywhere without a dealer plate, just period. Ever since 9/11, I'll never, ever travel without a dealer plate because you never know what can happen. 08, 09, right? We all know what happened with the economy then, what happened with the value of used cars. And then $4 gas, right? The first time SUVs, those big Ford Excursions and big Escalades and Tahoes and Suburbans, they crashed. And then the four-cylinder cars, skyrocketed. Priuses, had to buy a 2-year-old Prius, cost more than a brand new one. So I've seen it, right? But I've never seen the supply shock to the system like we have with COVID. I've never seen it. I've never seen used cars appreciate 35-40% higher than they were in 2019 and 2020. And it stayed there, right? Like the used car market's kind of done this, right? Up and down. But there has not gone back down a lot. And I don't think it's going to, which makes acquisition a huge challenge for car dealers, right? They got to have used cars, and it's hard. It's really hard to get cars.
So in part of your story, your background, I heard this was before the show, everybody, but before the show, we were talking about when did you start going to a physical auction?
I started going to auctions when I was a little kid with my dad, right? So, I was holding his hand walking through the lanes at 12 or 13 years old, sucking in fumes. But when did I start going and buying cars on my own? When I was 18, 19, 20 years old, I was in college. I was going to college full time, and I worked at the dealership too. But I started going to auctions, open auctions, and then closed GM factory auctions as well. And that was, that's a part of the business. It's all about acquisition. Doesn't matter what the industry is, and that's how I started to learn.
Right, and you had said, which I really got a lot of respect for this. You said I found people that were smarter than me to do this particular job because you were. It sounds like you were really good at acquiring vehicles at auctions.
I was blessed with having really great people. Great people came to me and were given to me to work with me, and I let them really run most aspects of the business. And my focus, along with another guy, who unfortunately was my best friend. He passed away about a year ago. Him and I bought most, if not all, the inventory. That's all we did, right? We bought all of our used cars, and we ran a very profitable retail business, and we actually ran a pretty profitable wholesale business as well. So I lived and breathed at the auctions for years physically. Then when they went online, I would do online and physical both. So, I can't even tell you how many hundreds of thousands of cars I probably bought and sold. Acquisition's the key.
So before 2020, in year 18, your whole life, auctions, buying cars, then you buy online. We saw a pretty big shift. Before the shift, I wanted to see, did you have what you might call like a route where you would hit these certain auctions within a certain radius on a regular basis?
So physical auctions, I was in the Northeast, right? So there's Manheim, Pennsylvania on Fridays. There was State Line Auto Auction on Fridays if I couldn't get to Manheim. Odessa, New Jersey for closed auctions. Odessa, Boston. There's a local auction at Odessa, Syracuse I used to go to. Odessa, Buffalo. One of the best auctions in the country is Southern Auto Auction in East Windsor, Connecticut. One of the nicest, finest, well-run independent auctions literally in the country. I would go there on Wednesdays. So I had a route, it all depended, but it always depended on what they had for cars, what consigners were running that week. And then, typically I would go with my buyer and we would work the sale together, or we would split up and he would go to one place and I would go to the other. But, it takes a lot of time and effort to buy cars at auctions. You got to get online days before. You got to really study condition reports, study the market, and really know where you want to go and really what you want to pay. It's a lot of work.
Okay, so so now 2020 rolls around. We've got links and articles where there were certain people talking in 2019 about, man, if we could close the door to the auction today, we would be happy to do that. Maybe some big auction brand names, but anyway, 2020 rolls around. Hey dealer. Hey, Todd, you can't come into your auction anymore. Sorry, buddy.
The auctions, they shut down. They shut down. And then, they shut down at first. So you couldn't, when COVID hit initially at the beginning, there was a liquidity problem for people in the car business. You could not dispose of inventory, period. If you couldn't retail it, you really couldn't wholesale it either. unless you were selling it, locally wholesale to another wholesaler because the auctions were closed. One of the things I was able to do was I had built a relationship up and I kind of did a beta test with Carvana at my dealership. So I was able to, I was selling cars on Carvana's platform. They called it Marketplace. So when I couldn't retail cars or necessarily wholesale cars, when everything was so liquid at the beginning of COVID, I was able to actually do some business by, working with Carvana because they were selling the cars all across the country. And every state had their own rules. Even certain counties had their own rules with COVID. And to me, the biggest concern to me was always like, you got to turn cash, right? You got to have cash flow. So that was a way to do it. But then the auctions went to just postcard sales, right? And the auctions were closed. You couldn't go there. Then they opened them back up, but the lanes were closed completely. Then the auction started to run cars through, but they weren't allowing people in, but you could actually see the cars. I remember, they had fake auctioneers, like with fake computer voices trying to sell cars at these auctions. I'm like, this is just no even if it's a postcard sale, you want to hear a real auctioneer talking. And I remember it like it was yesterday. It was only a few years ago. It's nuts. It was just crazy.
Crazy. So,
Wow.
what one of the things that I recognized right away was you take a guy who has a route that you just described beautifully, and you tell him he can't go there anymore, and he figures out, oh, I can just buy cars online anywhere. So he starts, this is what I call the shotgun approach, The price is right, the picture was right, the condition report was right, I can't go see it, so I'll just buy it. It's 5 states away, I'll throw it up on a load board, it'll get here. I mean, did you see that by chance?
Yeah. So I mean, I used to always, I would always describe it as, I would want to play in multiple sandboxes. I just didn't go to physical auctions. I would, make bid lists on Smart Auction and ACV and Odessa and OVE and bid on those cars as well, because sometimes the online market back in the day was different than the physical market and vice versa. And cars bring different money in different places. But, transportation, again, right, when we talk about transportation, that was a huge challenge too. A lot of guys didn't make it right through COVID. They just didn't. If their trucks weren't moving, they weren't making any money. And it wasn't just used cars, it was new cars too, right? There wasn't any new cars being built. So if you're someone in the transport business and your trucks aren't paid for, and you don't own them for cash, and you got people you got to pay, a lot of transporters went out of business.
Yeah. Well, you want to hear a crazy stat that we just came across? Todd, if you called me today and said, I've got a little money, I want to buy a truck and a trailer and be a car hauler. And I'm like, okay. Right now, today, the average life expectancy of that, what I just described, is 1.72 years, and he's gone. I've got another guy, I'm waiting on his data, but he's saying 6 months. So either way, what you're saying, to tie it into what you're saying, these guys that went out of business. So I get these phone calls because of what Jay's built on this platform. Car hauler, I want to be a car hauler, call Ty. Well, what we see, or what I see, is guys get into this and they don't have any money saved up. And this is a really cash intensive business. So then you start disrupting the market with, well, there's one over here, one over there. And, these guys are running around just chasing money. So it's fun to hear a dealer. I love to hear dealers talk about what really happened to them, because it really does match what we see in transportation. I don't know if that makes sense.
When we talk about transporters, right, I was very loyal to certain people that were in the transport business, even if they were a little bit more expensive, because I would always be at the auction. And when I was in the game, I was a big buyer. People knew who I was, and people were always approaching me at the auctions, no matter where I went. I used to go down to Orlando a lot too, and buy cars in Orlando and ship them north. What are you paying for a load? Well, this is what I'm paying. Well, I'll do it for $500 less. But to me, I'm like, no, because I can do business with the transporter, and he may go pick up 2 for me here that another guy doesn't want to get. I also know he's insured properly, right? Because a lot of these people that just want to, I hate to use this term, whore it out, right? But that's the only word I can use to describe it. They're not insured properly, or they say they're going to get their car to you and do it cheap, but get your cars for a week or two. I was just always a very, very loyal person. And there were certain people that I did business with. Wayne Scott was one of them. Wayne Scott's a great guy, and his son Andy's still running the business to this day. another guy named Wayne Miller, I used to do a lot of business with. I heard he just passed away. I had a lot of really close, tight relationships with people in the transportation business. I did. It was they're a very important part of the ecosystem, and it isn't. And two, like you look at some of these software platforms where you can post a car and then any transporter can pick it up. I think there's a danger in that. I really do for a dealer. Like you got to have a good relationship with people. You don't know who's getting your car, especially these days.
You should hear some of the stories. Ooh, it's crazy. Okay, well, as we're talking here, so we started out physical auction guy as a kid, 18, 19, 20s, just starts buying cars, turns that into basically a full-time job, hires people to do the other things, starts dabbling in the online buying cards. Now, there's, during COVID, real big push for buying in the lane or the drive. Is that how do you say that?
So shortage of used cars. You can't get cars at the auction. They're bringing too much money. So what does a dealer do? And this is what I do when I consult now, and this is what I help dealers with is acquisition of inventory. There's only a few ways to do it. You got to buy them from consumers, which is very, very challenging, especially if you're in a market where there's a CarMax or any other dealer. Every dealer's got a sign now, we buy cars out in front of the store, right? There's the service lane, right? The service drive where people are coming in for service every single day. And then there's your database, right? There's your database. Who did you sell cars to in the past? Who's in equity? Who can you get to either trade or just sell your car? Because a lot of people working from home, they don't necessarily need that extra car in the family, so they'll sell it. So I work with dealers to find creative marketing to drive traffic into the showroom or online to buy their cars, quote unquote, off the street. And then I work with dealers on process in the service drive and then process mining the database. And a lot of it's about compensation. It's a team sport in a car dealership. You can't just pay your salespeople to buy cars from consumers. You have to pay the kid in the wash bay that's washing cars. You have to pay the people in the accounting department, the title clerk, the mechanics. You got to pay everybody, right? Because they could be driving home and see a car for sale on the side of the street. If they're going to get paid to acquire that car, they're going to stop, right? They're going to stop and maybe make contact with the person trying to sell the car. If they don't get paid, they're not going to do it. So I always say it's a team sport. You got to pay.
You're like a skipper on a boat.
True.
Right? Wow.
Well, okay. So now, as a consultant for dealerships, banks, and auctions, from the acquisition standpoint, I'm assuming I really want to hear the pitch. But to me, it's like, okay, if you're going to acquire vehicles, the cars that are on your lot that are for sale, where did you get them? How did you get them? So that, to me, if I'm following the story right, I can go to a physical auction now. I can buy online, and I can buy them out of the drive. We buy cars and pay top dollar, which, by the way, Doug Haddon with ACV, he used what you just said in his presentation at NI80 this last week. He said, if you don't have on your front page of your dealership website, we buy cars and pay top dollar, you're missing it. And then I didn't know what a sandwich sign. Then he said, if you don't have a sandwich sign out front that says we buy cars and pay top dollar, you're missing it. Which I thought was crazy coming from a guy like Doug.
But it's got to be more than that, right? Marketing and advertising, you got to be creative. And then you got to have a way for a customer to actually get a value, right? And it may not be the exact value, but it might be a range, right? Your car's worth between $7,000 and $8,000 based on the information that you put in. Or if you want to upload photos of your car, we'll give you a firm offer, right? Because from a dealer's perspective, those, we'll call it leads, right? They convert very, very low. If you get 100 leads for someone that wants to trade or sell their car in, you might be lucky to get 5 or 6 cars out of 100 leads, because a lot of people are just fishing because they want to know what their car might be worth. But I find that the people that actually upload a photo of their car and go through a process to do it and invest a little bit of time rather than just get an instant cash offer with a number, probably want to get rid of their car. They either want to trade it or want to sell it. But,
that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. But, during COVID too, people watch the news, right? People watch CNN, they watch Fox. Used cars are worth more than ever. Dealers are going to pay a top dollar. So someone might have gone in just to see what their car's worth, just because they think they can get more for it than they ever got for it before. But the problem was, and probably still is in some cases, not quite as much, as they don't have a car, that the dealer doesn't have a car that they can sell them that they actually want, because inventory was so short. So your car might be worth $4,000 more than you thought it was, but if you can't replace it, right, because there's no inventory, then you're filling out a form, but and dealers calling you, but the dealers have anything to sell you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to kind of shift just a little bit. This is why we have Rich here, because I want to start, as we're learning from you, which thank you, by the way, dealers can acquire vehicles through a couple different ways. And there seems to be a lot of talk right now about the physical auctions, health or state or whatever it might be. And I would like for you and Rich to maybe do some back and forth as to where do you see the auction going, Todd? Does that make
Sure.
The physical auction, where do you see the physical auction headed, maybe in a year or 5 years?
I think that there's always going to be a place for the physical auction. Everybody thought that the physical auction was going to get replaced. I don't see it. Especially for older cars with higher miles, those are very, very difficult cars to buy. And most people that want to buy those cars that are dealers, they want to see them, they want to drive them, they want to smell them. They want to check codes, and they have to look at the condition report. The biggest problem in the industry right now, in my opinion, is condition reports. There's no uniform standard, right, for condition reports. There's 4 or 5 different standards, and condition reports are a mess. They've been a mess, and they're going to continue to be a mess. And the only way they're probably ever going to get fixed is AI. Probably at some point will fix it once it gets smart enough, when you don't have to rely on a human being to detect scratches and dents, and it all becomes uniform. That'll help. But I think that there's a place for both, and I think there always will be. I just do.
Where, Rich?
Amazing.
Where you at, buddy?
Yeah.
CRs,
you're hitting one of my
reports
favorite,
360.
Yeah, one of my favorite conversations. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago. The problem is, and you know where I'm going, Ty, they're not consistent, they're not accurate, and they're not transparent. And if you don't have these 3 things, you're not going to build up trust with your buyer. And Todd, you're absolutely correct. There is not a standard to set that consistency, accuracy, and transparency. And until that problem's solved, possibly with AI, we're going to continue to have this. It's still going to the buyer is still going to want to go to the auction, kick the tires, start it up, listen to the engine, smell the interior. I mean, how many times have we heard that? They said now there's AI technology that can tell you what kind of odors it is. I think AI's got a place, and I think it's going to help, and it might streamline. It's never going to replace people. But I think the physical auctions are still going to be there, but they've got to move things along to get into that AI space. They're going to have to embrace it, because if the physical auctions don't do it right now, somebody is going to come along and disrupt them and do it. So look at Netflix. They walked into Blockbuster and said, hey, we got this new way of doing movies. And they're like, get out of here. Now look at where Blockbuster is. Somebody walks into the auction and says, hey, we got a better way to do CRs. And they say, get out of here. And 5-10 years from now, somebody's going to have an AI platform out that's going to nail the CR down.
Well, the physical auctions have already been disrupted by the ACVs of the world, the backlot cars of the world, and some of these other platforms. And now what you're seeing too is a lot of the vendors that do vehicle photography at dealerships and window stickers, for example, or dents and scratches, who provide all those services. They're trying to build networks of the dealers that they service, so those dealers can trade cars with each other. And it's such a huge market, right? Like, I think that there's regionally, you're going to have people that are better than others at doing it, but the physical auctions will continue to get disrupted. But I think what you're going to find is the physical auctions are probably going to invest in technology, and some of them already are, to help with this condition report problem. I don't know if you guys ever heard of this product called UVI, UVEYE. Ever seen that?
We talk about
MRI for cars.
Yeah. Jamie Carpenter.
So CarMax, I believe, made an investment, and they're also using them at their locations where they have their own auctions for that. And I think there's going to be other, and there's going to be other companies that do the same thing. I think, right at the end of the day, those things are expensive, right? It's this big arc, and it's got all these cameras in it and all this software.
This is the question, right? What's the investment, right?
If you can do it on this eventually with a phone. And I think you will be able to do it with a phone with AI.
You already can.
Right. Within a
can.
year,
And
it'll
it
be
kind of works,
critical
right?
mass,
Kinda
right?
works.
Well, it depends
But-
on your phone too. This is actually
Correct.
something we're learning. Yeah.
Yep, it does. It depends on the phone, but at the end of the day, that will help. But condition reports cause a ton. Inaccurate condition reports cost a lot of money for everybody. It costs the dealer money. It costs the auction money, and it costs transportation companies money because then who do you blame, right? You blame the transporter.
All the
Transporter
time.
goes in to get the car, right? Well, there's damage on the car that wasn't on the CR, so okay, now we're going to blame the transporter now, and the transporter didn't necessarily do it. So for the transportation industry, I think it's important that people have good software too to actually walk the car before they even put the key in it and load it on the truck. If they can find the key, which is a whole other problem,
Whoa.
half the time the transporters go to the sale, they can't find the keys, or the
And
car's
what
not
you-
supposed to be.
Listen, Todd, what you just said, that we need to put that on the load board. Hey, it's not all about the metal on the trailer. Before you load that metal, watch this.
It's true.
Mhm.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
intense. Yeah, that's actually I think where we're headed.
I mean, a really
Hey.
sophisticated bill of lading with good software that actually works is huge, right? And it's just not easy. It's just that's what people don't understand about the used car business. There's so many moving parts, and it's so complicated, and it's so detail oriented, and so many facets. And if you don't understand it, and you think you can just go into it and it's easy, you can make a lot of money, you're wrong, straight up.
So, and I want to say this too: the value of the BOL
That's right.
has yet to be completely reverse engineered and discussed because carriers know they got to do a BOL, but they just do it because they're told they need to. And whoever's booking the load, I don't think is fully tapped into you're actually performing a service. And we see value in that, and we're going to compensate you for it. A higher quality BOL means there's a better chance we'd rather work with you. That conversation doesn't even exist, I don't think.
It should, because
I know.
look at if you get a car that you bought at the auction that had a 4.3 CR, and it shows up with all other kinds of damage on it. So what is that? That's phone calls, emails, text messages back and forth from the auction, photographs back and forth. Then it's negotiation about, geez, how much is the auction going to kick you back? Or the auction says, I'll just take the car back. Then the car has to get sent back, right? There's time. And used cars, I don't care, they depreciate, right? Now they're not depreciating so much, but before COVID, we know how quickly used cars would depreciate. So every day a car sits, it costs everybody money. And ultimately, time is money, which we all know.
And
Yeah,
getting back to the cars that are just thrown onto load boards anonymously, nobody knows anybody. What kind of service are you getting?
You're not.
Mm-mm.
I agree.
Todd, that reminds me, maybe after the show we can connect again, but there's a company I'd love for you to meet that Super Dispatch. Those guys, they've got a load board and a super pay thing for maybe some of your clients to help manage that inventory that they're buying online. It's pretty cool. But anyway, sorry, that was a side note.
But
Go ahead.
no, Super Dispatch. We do. We'll tell you more later. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I
Tell
never
you
heard.
more later about them. They do a pretty decent job in the transportation arena from the standpoint of the technology and the marketplace, vetted carriers, blah, blah, blah. And the controller, I learned today, Todd, you probably know about this. If the controller's not happy, nobody's happy. Is that true?
Oh, yeah. 1%. That's right.
Well,
And does the controller like writing a bunch of checks to a bunch of transport guys? that
Right
they don't
now.
even know?
They're doing it right now.
well,
Running
today,
to the bank.
look, Todd's in the retail business, so look at the calendar. What is today? It's the last day of the month. What is every single dealer doing right now?
Delivering cars as fast as he or she can.
Yeah.
They got the
Delivering-
controller running too, trying to get they want to hit their numbers for their books.
Correct.
The whole place is humming right now. It's 12:30. Right.
12:30. We better hurry up and head to the lot, guys.
Right. Everyone's like,
And it's-
skip
and it's-
lunch. This is
And it's 4th of July weekend. Everybody wants to go home.
right.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. Well, it is awesome to hear your story and very, very interesting. And I think, leaving off here right around the CR condition report. I don't know if you guys, Jay, do you have anything else?
No, actually, this is perfect. It's 12:30,
Yeah.
and this was a solid 30 minutes of great content, and you always want to end on a high note, right?
Yeah.
So this is
I think we did it. Todd killed it.
We could have gone for another couple hours if we wanted to. I think we just scratched the surface, you guys.
I agree.
Oh,
so maybe we need to have Todd Caputo back on
Do it.
ATI. This was
Todd,
let's do that.
tell everybody your consulting firm company. And,
Yeah, so
we'll
it's
pass it around.
Todd Caputo Consulting is my website.
.com.
Pretty easy to find, and all the information about me is there. You can contact me, and regardless of what part of the auto industry that you're in, I can probably help you in some way, shape, or form. I'm sure, and I appreciate.
Clear.
Yeah,
Tell me about
I
your.
had a good time talking with you guys.
Hey, Rich wants to hear about your shirt for a minute.
I went on your website today. Tell us about that.
So, it says fear mediocrity. And I think that, a lot of mediocrity has crept into not just the car business, but to other industries as well, really due to COVID. People have just gotten, I don't want to say lazy, but just felt like it's just okay to be mediocre because every car that comes off the truck new is probably already pre-sold and it's already sold for sticker or better. And we don't need to really chase leads the way that we should. And we don't need to pay attention to detail as much as we should. We don't need to clean our cars as much as we should or as much as we need to. So that's changing now, right? Because the industry's starting to have more supply. Grosses are starting to go down. And just in the car business is one thing, but in general, customer service, I think, kind of went by the wayside a little bit during COVID, and I know we got to end this, but just remember, just a couple of years ago, the only thing you could do if you wanted to eat was get takeout, right? Because restaurants were not open. People forgot customer service. Curbside pickup at Best Buy, curbside pickup at Walmart. You didn't have to walk in and interact and talk to somebody and have somebody actually help you and answer questions because human interaction was literally shut off for like a year and a half. And I think people have forgotten that. So that's my, I guess that's my slogan, right? For my business is fear mediocrity, because if you think that it's okay to be mediocre, you're going to get swallowed up, not just in your professional life, but in your personal life as well.
Okay. So I envisioned your ad campaign, take it or leave it. It's called Molasses People. So that's everyone great. Is made of molasses. They answer the phone, they deliver their car, right? They're washing, and then here comes fear mediocrity. You
can figure it out pretty quick. When dealers call me or other people in the industry call me, the first thing I do is we do a mystery shop, right? Mystery shop your business. And when you mystery shop your business, no matter what it is, you're going to find out where you've got some mediocrity for sure.
Ooh, mystery shopping the molasses people is part 2. I love it, man. I love talking about this stuff, just coming up with ideas and sharing stuff. This has been such a great show. So, Todd, we really appreciate you and your time and your contribution.
Hey, thanks for doing what you're doing. It's great that you do this, and I know that your audience is more people in transport, right? And let me tell you something. I've met some of the nicest people and hardest working people in the transport business ever.
Salt of the earth,
hardest working people, literally at the same auctions every week, months, years, decades, hauling cars. And I, one of my best friends, and he was a good friend in the business, his name was Jeff Rotella. He got killed, right? He got killed. And I'm sure you probably all know someone that got killed doing what they're doing in this end of the business. It's a dangerous business.
It is dangerous.
It really is. Hauling cars is not easy. The margins aren't great, and it's a dangerous business, and I think it's a labor of love. So, all the people that are in your part of the industry, thanks for what you do. I mean that sincerely.
Wow, that is cool. So cool coming from a dealer. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Todd.
And Rich, thank you for joining us. Awesome.
Yeah, that was great.
Being here. I learned today. I'm here to learn. Thank you.
We always learn every day. That's what we're here for.
All right. If you need anything, holler at me. Thanks, Jay. Thanks,
call or text Ty 417-483-2764. ToddCaputoConsulting.com. Rich, thank you so much. Dignity Leadership.
Thanks, guys.
We'll see you next time. All right. Bye-bye. Thanks very much. And I'll end the meeting there. That's right. It's ad hoc, right? It's a flexible channel. It's ATI Auto Business. And I realize, most people are busy right now, getting ready for the 4th. finishing up the last day of the month. We understand Q3 is right around the corner. So if you watch this later or listen to the podcast or just catch us on the next one, we appreciate all of that. I think why are dealers... let me get this right. Why dealers struggle. Why car dealers struggle to acquire used car inventory at auto auctions. I think that's the new title of this show. Plus, we talked about condition reports, which we'll hit again on Condition Reports 360. Tuesday night show is just the 4th of July. Hello. We know that really next week doesn't get started until near the end of the week. We'll be back on Thursday with Dispatching Live and again on Friday. Oh, Friday, we've got Joe Obervie, Nick Zulovich of Cherokee Media joining us. So please stay tuned. Thanks for tuning into ATI Auto Business. Thanks for the likes, shares, comments, and subscribes. We appreciate you. Have a great weekend and stay safe. And we'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody.